Halo Infinite was a real second chance for the franchise, from nearly being on top of the world, gathering the momentum that could have brought back the renaissance of the Halo series, recapturing the most amount of interest since early 2012, to being arguably at the lowest point in terms of morale and interest that Halo has ever seen. But what caused this exactly? There's been a lot of discourse about what exactly happened to Halo Infinite, and it's not quite as simple as nailing it down to one specific cause that led it to meet its demise. And I want to be clear here, Halo Infinite still has its hardcore fan base and community, and for myself, I was more interested in Halo Infinite than I have been for basically any installment since Halo 4, and I'm sure many of you will relate to that. Halo Infinite was 343's real chance at redemption here, and capturing the spirit of Halo from the past decade, but to fully understand the roller coaster that was Halo Infinite's dev cycle and subsequent launch, and the release, we have to fully understand what caused the downward spiral of Halo Infinite, and we need to go back to where it all started in the beginning. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by my friend Lex, actually, and Editit.tv. Have you ever wanted to make your own YouTube content, but you don't know anything about editing? Well, Editit.tv makes that super easy to connect with and hire editors who understand the algorithm and make content that works for it. The interface is super easy to use and allows for seamless communication with your client or editor. By getting the premium subscription, you get unlimited orders with no extra transaction charges. It's by far the best way to get your YouTube content kickstarted, and you can start your YouTube journey today with Editit.tv. Link is down in the description. Thank you to Lex and Editit.tv for sponsoring this video. In 2016, 343 began piecing together ideas for the next Halo game. 343 up to this point hadn't had the best track record with Halo or its general community. Ever since the handoff from Bungie, 343 did many things to Halo, such as changing its overall art style, making massive changes to the core Halo formula, Halo 4 being more akin to the COD gameplay loop format, and even flat-out false advertising at times with Halo 5's marketing campaign. It's safe to say that 343 Industries wasn't without its controversies or has really built up a ton of trust or goodwill with the Halo fanbase, generally speaking. With the conception of their next game, Halo Infinite would be touted as a return to form for the Halo series, walking back many of the changes that people didn't like from 4 and 5. No more player built-in abilities or customizable classes, more classic movement with sprint severely reduced, more sandbox gameplay with world-spawn weapons and equipment and so on. They even made it clear that this installment would be a return to the classic Halo art style as well, which is still oh god.
Well,
the game would be polished up a bit more visually, as it was announced to be delayed for a little bit, but the point was Halo would indeed look like Halo again. And, you know, as far as the campaign goes, this was promised to be a sprawling, living, open world full of life, wild animals, and the atmosphere to really feel like it's living and breathing, and bringing the core Halo experience to that. And as far as the multiplayer goes, 343 promised this would be the time they get it right. The core gameplay would be the more sandbox form of arena multiplayer that its fan base originally fell in love with, and it seems something about the way they handled themselves initially in the months leading up to its release, most people were on board with the direction that Halo was currently taking, and people began to get invested again. This game was able to reach the widest audience since 2012, which is absolutely insane in retrospect. In fact, they even dropped the multiplayer as a surprise at the end of 2021, and people took this as a taste of, you know, what to expect for the full experience when the game officially launched. And to no one's surprise, this strategy was a great success. So with all of this in mind and a variety of factors working in its favor, what could go wrong? In hindsight, one of the first cracks in the armor we should have seen was the fact that in comparison to other games, there wasn't a whole lot of developer interviews, besides with Joe Staten, that were talking about the game. On the surface, this may not seem like a big deal, but what it indicated to me was the fact that the leadership and the vision for the final product was constantly changing, and they may not have been confident enough to show off their ideas as the groundwork was constantly shifting underneath them. It's clear looking at Halo Infinite now that the goal goalposts were always changing. It's extremely difficult to make a video game in the first place, and that's exacerbated by the fact that much of their work was allegedly contracted out to people for a maximum of 18 months, with a game that took 6 years to make. This means, in theory, it was a bunch of unfinished components being handed off to people multiple times over throughout its entire life cycle, and with multiple, avenues of the game being developed at the same time. It's like basically 6 or 7 games being developed at once and trying to be shoved into one cohesive experience. It just doesn't work that way. And while outsourcing large parts of your video game probably isn't that uncommon in game development, I can't help but feel the degree to which that goes on has a real effect on the complete package of the experience, and the complete package, while you have everyone's attention, is what you really need to sell people on. Halo Infinite launched with arguably the least amount of content for a Halo game ever. While Halo 5 is certainly a contender there as well, Halo Infinite may be the one that takes the cake. With everything from the campaign being clearly not what was promised or envisioned to be, in a post-Elden Ring world, it makes Halo Infinite's open world formula pale in comparison. And for the multiplayer, while the core gameplay is actually excellent, and it's a taste of why we fell in love with Halo to begin with, it's clearly lacking a variety of maps, and the maps it does have feel kind of samey, and they don't have the character of some of the more classic Halo maps. There's just not too many of them right now, and even with Season 2 adding a few new ones, it does little to stop the bleeding. Forge mode at the time of me making this video is still nowhere to be found. There are Forge prototypes, and it's still slated for Season 3, but to me, it was practically a death sentence to launch without it. Forge is just as integral to the structure of Halo as the multiplayer is, or the campaign in my eyes. Forge is the Halo experience in some real sense, and all those compounded by the fact that the progression in Infinite is a joke. Instead of playing the way you want to in-game and performing well to progress, you're arbitrarily limited by your challenges, and oftentimes it comes down to the choice of playing with your friends or playing to complete challenges. In fact, most of the time, that's actually what it is. You have to forego playing with buddies and having that social Halo experience that the series is famous for to complete these random and, artificially arbitrary tasks and challenges that you don't even want to do in an extremely linear progression system. Halo Infinite is quite odd because at its launch, in the first month or so of the game, Halo Infinite seemed to really bring back the Halo spirit and revitalize the series. However, once the honeymoon phase wore off, the underlying issues that plagued the game began to rear its ugly head.
99. I haven't played Halo in a while. Kind of sucks to say, but it just feels like there's absolutely no energy around Halo from a community standpoint. I don't know. I'm not feeling the energy of Halo, and it sucks to say it.
It dawned on us very rapidly just how little there is to this game when looking clearly at it. You could see the end of the box, so to speak, after just a couple of hours of playtime. Halo Infinite was practically a smokescreen. It appeared on the surface to have all the things you like about Halo, but it was severely lacking in every area imaginable. But this is a live service game, said the copium-huffing masses, including me. The lack of content will be fixed in due time, and in some ways that's probably true. What it doesn't account for, however, is the fact that Halo Infinite will never have the magic that it did at its launch. Forge mode, or hell, even a battle royale for Halo can come out, and while it might see a slight influx of returning players, it's unlikely to grip the public eye like it did when Halo Infinite launched to the world. But besides the astonishing lack of content at this point and, some of the issues technically with desync and that kind of thing, what I feel like the real crime with Halo Infinite is, it goes much deeper than just a shallow selection of content to me. Halo Infinite is what feels like the most antisocial Halo game ever, and this is a big deal. Above all else, what is core to the Halo experience is the social element that it brings to the table and what that means to people. Halo 3, as an example, has things like Forge mode when it launched. That allowed for the community to make their own modes and practically entire games out of the base tools. Infection as a game mode is something people strictly play Halo for sometimes. It also has in-game lobbies, so you can trash talk opponents before and after the games that heighten the intensity. You had browsers to download download community projects and play them with your friends, be it for Griffball, Duck Hunt, Fat Kid, and so on. These things are what people remember about Halo and the experiences those caused with their friends. And all those things I just mentioned, Halo Infinite currently has none of those things. Hell, there isn't even a pre-game lobby. The UI in general is extremely clunky on this game, but it even makes the lack of a real pre-game lobby even worse. Lobbies disband mostly after every match, so there's far less chance for any real social interaction to occur. This is what Halo Infinite is severely lacking in. I see a lot of people say that 343 just don't understand Halo, and while I don't think that's exactly true, I think 343 get Halo from a technical perspective. They get the gameplay, it seems, with its core multiplayer, especially in Infinite. They get the story and, maybe not. They get the components of what make up a Halo game on paper on a very surface level. However, I don't think they quite understand or are able to pull off what Halo means to people socially, which is perhaps the most important piece to the puzzle. Beyond all the other issues with gameplay, lack of content, horrible progression system, and borderline predatory microtransaction and armor system, the biggest detriment to Halo Infinite at the moment is its lack of social features and community-driven gameplay. You're never going to remember the random Slayer match or BTB match you played on Infinite, but you'll always remember your first time playing Griffball with your friends or getting a kill-tacular in Duck Hunt. These are the kinds of experiences Halo Infinite is desperately lacking at the moment, and unless they can course correct, not only by smoothing the backbone and core of the game, but adding official content and opening the gates for community play and interaction, it's very hard to see a world where Infinite captures the magic that it had on its launch. The Halo community is tired of words at this point. We'll do better next time. It'll change. Trust us. It's like an abusive relationship at this point, and while I don't think any devs are personally solely responsible for the outcome of this situation, I do think the lack of consistent leadership, and especially how that ground is always shifting, makes everyone, creating the game have no direction or goal. There is no conceivable world in when your leadership changes over 5 or 6 times that doesn't have some kind of negative outcome on the core experience, and I do believe that to be one of the major issues with Infinite. At the end of the day, most of the core problems, or even minor ones, can be boiled down to a lack of really strong leadership. And we'll see if somehow Joe Staten and whoever are able to sort of reinstate that leadership and that real clear goal and direction, because I think that is what Halo Infinite is sorely lacking. Halo Infinite's player count has dwindled from over 250,000 concurrent players down to just a few thousand at any given time, and even the MCC will pass the player count on occasion. The downfall of Infinite was one of the most dramatic I've seen to almost any video game, reaching peaks previously unseen for a decade, yet falling sharply below where it started only a few months later. It goes to show how powerful brand recognition and idea loyalty can be, but also the consequences of undelivering on experiences that were available to us over a decade ago, and failing to really capture any kind of new audience. There is still hope for Halo Infinite, however. Forge mode and a potential battle royale could cause a Phoenix-like comeback for this game. Only time will tell though, and I still do think the main game should ultimately be prioritized, but in the meantime, we can only hope that something will click with 343 Industries that will help them to be able to course correct the Halo franchise, and we'll see what happens as the decade progresses.